So, you want to own a car dealership. You've driven past one 100 times. Rows of shiny vehicles under bright lights, flags snapping in the wind, salespeople in polo shirts walking lot to lot. You've sat across from one of those salespeople, watched them disappear into a back office, and come out with a number that somehow got better twice before you signed anything. And you thought, whoever owns this place is printing money. You're not wrong. Car dealerships in the United States generated over $1.4 trillion in total sales in 2024. The average dealership cleared $7.4 million in gross profit last year. Some of the biggest dealer groups in the country are worth more than most professional sports franchises. But here's the thing nobody tells you before you write that first check. The car is almost the least profitable part of selling a car. To open a franchised new car dealership, a Ford, a Toyota, a GM store, you don't just need money, you need permission. Every major automaker controls who gets to sell their vehicles through a franchise agreement. You apply to the manufacturer. They vet you. They decide if your market has room, if your facility meets their standards, and whether they want you representing their brand. If the answer is yes, you pay a franchise fee. For a domestic brand like Ford or Chevrolet, that's typically $30,000 to $50,000 just to get in the door. Then comes the real number. To meet manufacturer facility standards, the right building, the right showroom square footage, the right service bay count, the signage, the technology systems you're looking at. A total investment of $5 million to $15 million for a mid-market domestic brand store. A luxury import dealership, your BMW, your Mercedes, your Lexus, can run $20 million to $50 million before you've put a single car on the lot. And you don't own those facility standards. The manufacturer does. They update them whenever they want, and you have to comply or lose the franchise. BMW's latest dealer standard push, called Retail, Next has been requiring dealers to spend millions on showroom renovations. Not optional, not negotiable. Sound familiar? That's your first lesson. You don't just buy a dealership, you buy an obligation. Now let's talk about where the money actually comes from, because most people get this completely wrong. The average new car sold in the U.S. in 2024 carried a gross profit of around $2,400 per unit on the front end. That's the difference between what the dealer paid the manufacturer, the invoice price, and what you paid at the desk. After salesperson commission, advertising allocation, and floor plan interest, the net per new car is often under $1,000. On some high-volume economy models, it's closer to $200. The industry term for this is front-end gross, and for most dealerships, it's been shrinking for 20 years. So where does the $7.4 million average gross profit actually come from? 3 places, and none of them are the car, finance, and insurance. The F&I office. That back room the salesperson disappears into. The person who comes out and asks if you want the extended warranty, the paint protection, the gap insurance, the tire and wheel package. That office generates, on average, $1,600 to $2,200 per vehicle retailed, sometimes more than the front-end gross on the car itself. The products cost the dealer almost nothing. The margin on a $3,000 extended warranty is often 60 to 70%. F&I is the single most profitable department in most dealerships, and most customers walk in thinking they're buying a car and walk out having bought 4 or 5 products they barely understood. Service and parts. This is the long game. The reason manufacturers push dealers to build bigger service bays isn't goodwill. It's because fixed operations, service, parts, and body shop generate the most consistent, high-margin revenue in the building. A well-run service department generates $3 million to $6 million in gross profit annually at a volume store. Labor rates run $150 to $250 an hour at franchise dealers. The technician gets paid 40 to 50% of that. The rest stays in the building. Every car sold on the lot is a future service customer. The car is the acquisition cost for a decade of oil changes, brakes, tires, and warranty work. Used vehicles. New cars have thin margins and manufacturer pricing pressure. Used cars have neither. A dealer who buys a 3-year-old trade-in for $18,000 and retails it for $24,500 just cleared more gross profit than selling 5 new economy sedans. The best dealer operators in the country treat new car sales as lead generation for their used car operation. This is the real business model. The car on the lot is the bait, the financing, the warranty, the service lane, and the trade-in cycle that's the trap. And it's a very profitable trap. Here's where it gets complicated. You think you own your dealership? In a legal sense, you do. But in a practical sense, you operate inside a system designed entirely by someone else. The manufacturer controls your inventory. In a supply-constrained market like 2021 and 2022, dealers were marking vehicles up $5,000 to $20,000 over sticker and making more money than they ever had. In a supply-heavy market like 2024 and 2025, those same dealers are sitting on 90-day inventory, paying floor plan interest, typically prime plus 1 to 2% on every car on the lot, watching margins compress back towards zero. Floor plan interest is something most people have never heard of. It works like this. The manufacturer ships you vehicles. You don't own them outright. You finance them through a lending arm, usually tied to the manufacturer, and you pay interest on every car that sits on your lot until it sells. In a high-rate environment with slow-moving inventory, a large dealer can pay $500,000 to $1.5 million per year in floor plan interest alone, just to have cars to sell. The manufacturer also controls your allocation. If you're a Toyota store and Toyota has 500 Camrys to distribute across your region, someone at Toyota decides how many you get. Dealers who hit their sales targets get better allocation. Dealers who don't get squeezed. It creates a treadmill. You need volume to get inventory, and you need inventory to get volume. And then there's the survey, the Customer Satisfaction Index. Every major manufacturer runs one. Your customers get a survey after buying. Your scores affect your bonus money called holdback or dealer incentive money, which can be $200 to $400 per vehicle and represents a meaningful chunk of annual profit. One customer who marks you a 4 out of 5 instead of a perfect 5 can cost you money, which is why every salesperson at a franchise dealership tells you, almost word for word, the same thing before you leave. If you get a survey, anything other than all 10s is considered a failing grade. They're not being polite, they're protecting their income. While dealers are grinding through floor plan interest and CSI surveys and mandatory facility renovations, the manufacturers are running a completely different business. Ford Motor Company doesn't make most of its money selling cars. Ford Credit, the financing arm, generated $3.4 billion in earnings before taxes in 2024. Toyota Financial Services contributed similarly. When you finance your car through the dealership, the dealer gets a small cut for placing the loan. The manufacturer's captive finance company gets years of interest payments. The real money in the car business isn't in the car. It's in owning the system the car moves through. The manufacturer owns the brand, the technology, the warranty terms, the finance company, the parts, supply chain, and the franchise agreement. The dealer owns the building, the inventory liability, the staff headcount, and the customer relationship, which the manufacturer is now trying to own directly through app-based service scheduling, online ordering, and in some cases, direct-to-consumer sales. Tesla proved you could sell cars without dealers at all. Every traditional manufacturer watched that happen, then watched Tesla's margins, and started asking why they needed 17,000 middlemen taking a cut. Dealers have fought back through state franchise laws, some of the strongest dealer protection legislation in the country, which in most states makes it illegal for a manufacturer to sell directly to consumers or terminate a franchise without cause. These laws are the single most important asset a dealer owns, and most customers have never heard of them. The dealers who actually build generational wealth in this business are not the ones opening one store and hoping for the best. The model that works is scale. The publicly traded dealer groups AutoNation, Penske Automotive, Lithia Motors operate hundreds of locations and use their size to negotiate better floor plan rates, better manufacturer relationships, centralized back-office operations, and shared service infrastructure. Lithia Motors went from a single Oregon store to over 300 locations in roughly 2 decades. Their stock has outperformed most of the S&P 500 over that period. The private dealer families who built multi-generational wealth did the same thing on a smaller scale. 1 store becomes 3. 3 becomes 8. You centralize the accounting, the reconditioning, the used car buying. You build a body shop that services all your stores. You negotiate volume discounts on parts. Suddenly, the economics that barely work at 1 store start to compound across the group. 1 store is a very expensive job. 10 stores is a business. Let's close the loop. You buy a mid-market domestic franchise, Ford, Chevy, something like that. All-in cost, $8 million. You're selling 800 new and used vehicles a year, which is solid but not exceptional volume for a market of that size. Your gross profit breakdown looks something like this: $1.8 million from vehicle sales front end, $1.4 million from F&I, $2.6 million from service and parts, $600,000 from used car operations. Total gross, roughly $6.4 million. Your expenses, $2.1 million in personnel, $800,000 in floor plan interest, $600,000 in facilities and utilities, $400,000 in advertising, $300,000 in manufacturer compliance costs. Total overhead, roughly $4.2 million. Net operating profit, around $2.2 million. On an $8 million investment, that's a 27% return on paper. But that number assumes good inventory conditions, a strong used car market, no major facility mandate from the manufacturer, and a service department running near capacity. Miss on any 2 of those and you're back under 15%. And every 7 to 10 years, the manufacturer will ask you to renovate. Budget another $2 to $5 million for that. The floor plan keeps running whether you're selling or not. The staff keeps getting paid. The manufacturer keeps sending surveys. The dealership you drive past doesn't look like work, but behind those lights and those flags and those rows of shiny vehicles is a machine that requires constant feeding capital, inventory, compliance, and patience. The people who get rich in this business figured out one thing everyone else missed. The car was never the product. The customer was.